Welcome back to Twin Stick Garage. This is the place where I actually build up semi-trucks and try and restore them by myself in my spare time on my weekends. And this current project here, this is a 79 Kenworth W900A, and I'm trying to build it up like the one used in the Smokey and the Bandit movie. I'm eastbound up, watch old Bandit run. And if you've been watching along, you've been following along on these episodes, you'll know that recently I actually was successful in getting the paint put on the truck, and then of course I buffed it down and got rid of all the orange peel and all the mistakes I made, because I'm definitely an amateur painter. But it turned out pretty decent, and then we still need to put the gold bars on, which will be a vinyl wrap, and that'll be in a future episode. But today I wanted to focus on the drives. Now, these look real pretty. They're 24/5s, they're polished out by Spectrum on the west end of Edmonton. They just did a beautiful job. These are actually old vintage wheels from the 80s, and they made them look like new. And they're brand new tires. I got these from Fountain Tire and off the white mud there. And then I got new steel wheels on the inner, but they're not quite right. Now, in order to make it movie correct, these are the wheels we want. So these are actually 22-inch wheels. These are 24/5s. Now, these aren't to be confused with the 22/5s that you can get nowadays. These are 22s, and they stopped making them years ago for the main reason they're actually split rings. So they're not split wheels. Those are the Widowmakers that a lot of people call. They were steel wheels made by Firestone. So these are split rings, and split rings are still used today. They're used in the military, they're used on industrial equipment. And the reason they're called a split ring is because this ring is split, and what allows it to do is when you air the tire down, you can actually pry this ring off, and you can remove the tire off the rim. See, it's got a standard lip on the back, but the front, the lip is actually the ring. So they're a little dangerous. You definitely need to respect them, but these are the wheels that were used in the movie.
All right. In trouble. I know we're in trouble.
If you've been following along for a while, you know that I went on a big road trip down to Ohio to get a new set of these 10 22-inch tires, which they've stopped making them 20, 30 years ago. But the Southern Tire Mart actually was able to make a special batch for me and a few other nuts that like making things original. So I got those tires, they're waiting to be installed, but I can't install these wheels on these hubs. And the main reason why is because this truck came from the factory with inner and outer steel wheels. Now, the steel wheels are thinner. They're about 3/8 of an inch, and the aluminum wheels are they're about 7/8. They're almost an inch thick. So when you stack two aluminum wheels together, you need the stud to be at least 2 inches long. Well, you've got the first stud there. These are stud pilot wheels where you have the first stud on the hub, you put the wheel on, and then you put an outer stud, and then that's what the outer wheel goes onto. But that first stud on the hub needs to actually be long enough to support the weight of two aluminum wheels because it sticks out farther. Anyway, where I'm going with this is I kind of cheated on this setup before I went off on this crazy path to do the proper split ring inner and outer wheels. So there's actually, currently on this truck, there's an inner steel wheel because, again, the hub doesn't have a long enough stud to accommodate a thicker aluminum wheel. So it's steels on the inner and aluminum on the outer. Now, in order to make this work, I have to upgrade the hubs to have a longer stud in order to accommodate those wheels. So about a year ago, this particular hub back here was damaged, and I worked with my local heavy truck supplier, Fort Garry, and the parts rep there was able, Vince, hey Vince, he was able to work with ConMet. Now, ConMet's the world leader in manufactured hubs. They provide all the hubs for the new Peterbilts, the new Kenworths, Volvos, Freightliners, all of it. But they actually also produce hubs for the older vehicles like this. So they were able to cross-reference, and they got me a brand new hub and sent it to Fort Garry, which I went and picked it up. So anyway, it was just the hub, so I had to put in the seal, I had to put in the bearings, and then I had to mount it on the truck.
Throw our hub on.
And now there's an 8-step process to put that on there properly. You got to put the main, torque the main nut. I think it was 250 or 300 foot-pounds. I'm going off memory here. And then you back it off and you spin it, and then you tighten it again to 50 foot-pounds, and then you put the lock ring on, and then you put the jam nut on and torque that up. And then you have to measure the end clearance to make sure that hub only has 1 to 5 thousandths of an inch of end play. Too little and it's too tight and it'll burn up the bearings. Too much and it can come loose, and this whole mess can come flying off at highway speeds and kill somebody. So it needs to be set up correctly. So I reached out to ConMet and said, hey, I need to get 4 new hubs for this truck. Don't worry, these aren't going to go to waste. All this is going to be transferred over to the Iron Duke, my cabover project. So again, it's not going to waste, it's going to a good home. But I reached out to ConMet and said, can you help me with the part numbers, because I need now the hubs, new hubs with the longer studs to accommodate these inner and outer split ring wheels. Again, this is self-imposed challenge because I wanted to make the movie correct, but it'll be worth it in the end. So ConMet, they actually said, yeah, we can help you out with that. And they talked to me about a new product that's pretty exciting, and they were able to actually hook me up with that. So that's what we're going to cover in this episode. I'm going to show you those hubs. I'm going to show you the new technology, and we're actually going to install them on the wheels here, and I think you're going to like it. It's pretty slick. Okay, so here's the fancy gear that they sent me. And again, you guys at ConMet, you're mint in my books. So this is the preset hub. So this is their newer technology hub where everything's already set up for you. You don't have to assemble it yourself, put the seal in, the bearings, and then again, go through that 8-step process to get the proper end tolerance to ensure that it doesn't either burn up the bearings or come flying off. So because there can be such a wild variance in skills of mechanics or competency or whatever, a lot of the truck and trailer manufacturers, they reached out to ConMet and they said, look, can you build us a better mousetrap? So that's when they came up with this preset technology. And it's actually pretty slick, because what you do with this is, let's see here. Now you're not supposed to take the end cap off, you're supposed to leave it on, but I'm going to take it off just for demonstration purposes. But it goes right onto the spindle as is, just like this. So you've got your, well, I'll show you here. They've already got the seal installed. They've got the inner bearing sitting on the race. And then they've got the, take that out of there. They've got the outer bearing. So I'll just take this out again for demonstration purposes. And this is the magic actually here. So some people might call this a crush sleeve, but it's actually not. It's a bearing spacer. So it's precision machined to actually set up the right tolerance when you torque the outer nut. So they're shooting, remember how I said 1 to 5 is the typical industry accepted tolerance for end play? They're shooting for 0 tolerance because it's machined so precisely. So that goes in there, it goes over the spindle. And you got, of course, got your outer bearing. And we'll put this back on just so it doesn't all fall out. So when you install it on the truck, you put it on the spindle, and then there's ConMet has their own locking ring and nut. So this, obviously the tab lines up with the notch and the spindle, so that'll just go on there. And then the nut, you'll tighten that. I had to get a special socket, a 3 3/4 inch socket. But ConMet's actually pretty slick, because they've got what in the industry that I work in, we call it mistake proofing, but they actually put the model number, the part number, and it says preset only, and then the instructions as well. So it says 300 foot-pounds. So you're not accidentally going to over torque this or under torque this. So they've got all these different notches here, and then they've got the 3 lock ring holes. So once you get to your 300 foot-pounds, you're just going to pick the spot where the holes line up, put that in there, and it's going to snap the lock ring over top of into the slot there. and it's done. There's no end play clearance, there's no going back and presetting it again if you've got too much or too little. It's a one and done. It's a pretty slick system, so I can't wait to actually put this on the truck. Now this is their preset technology. They've actually got one that is even more advanced than this called Preset Plus. It's for their the newer trucks. Now all this stuff is standard now on Peterbilts, Kenworths, Volvos, Freightliners, as I was saying. It's the industry standard. And the reason this is so slick is because the Preset Plus, when you go to take this off, and you're gonna see when I take this off of here, I'm gonna have to, wiggle it around, and inevitably when you try and pull it off the spindle, the outer bearing falls onto the ground. With the Preset Plus, it's actually got a spiral snap ring that allows you to, as you back the nut off, it pulls the hub right off the spindle. So it's pretty slick, and it comes all preloaded. Now the reason we couldn't go with the Preset Plus for this application is because I wanted to stick again with the split ring wheels, and they're the older style stud pilot as opposed to hub pilot. So they use the studs to line up the wheel as opposed to the newer ones that has the hub and that centers the wheel. So you don't have the inner and outer lug nuts. So if I went to newer wheels, I could have went to Preset Plus, where it's all kind of preloaded and you put it on there. Either way, this is still light years ahead of the existing technology that's on this truck. And then they also provided me these TruTurn drums. Now these are pretty slick as well, because they're unlike your typical drums that you're going to see out in industry that are cast. These are actually fully machined, one-piece machined. The cast ones, you'll spot them because you can see casting marks, and when they go to spin them up to balance them, they typically have to weld a weight on it in different spots, just like balancing your car wheels. So you'll see those weights on there. Or the other thing that they can do is machine out a slot to counteract wherever the imbalance is. And the problem when you see that, when it's machined out, is it creates kind of a, what do they call it, a stress concentration, and you can get cracking. When these drums get really hot, when you do some hard braking, they'll get hot, and as they get older, and they almost always, well, I think pretty much always, start cracking, initiate cracks at that, where that slot is cut. So these don't have that problem. They're better for thermal expansion. They're just state of the art. And the reason they provided me these is because the drums that are on these existing older style hubs won't work with the preset. So we got a whole new setup here. Again, the drums aren't going to go to waste. They're going to go over to the Duke. So all that's going to be sent over to the cabover. But thanks again, ConMet. This is a pretty slick setup, and I can't wait to start installing this. Okay, so these are the inner and outer lugs I was talking about. And if you watched the series for a while, you know I've talked about these before. But essentially these guys go on and hold the inner wheel on the hub stud. And then it creates a new stud for the outer wheel to go on. And then once the outer wheel goes on, the nut just holds that in place. So it's kind of got an inner and outer stud. Now these things can seize, so you want to definitely use anti-seize on there, because if you drag an old rusty truck out of the field like I did with that Peterbilt, I had a whole bunch of these that were actually seized together, and we had to cut them off. And then for your younger fellers out there, remember that with these old Bud studs, stud pilot wheels, on the driver's side, it's reverse thread, so it's clockwise to remove. I've heard stories of guys taking these older trucks to tire shops, and the whoever was doing the tires there didn't realize, and of course they're trying to go backwards, and they break the stud off. Oh, the wrong way. There we go. Okay. Oh, these steel ones are heavy. Come on off of there. There you go. So next up, we've got to release the spring brakes. So these are kind of like parking brakes when there's no air. Right now, obviously, there's no air pressure in the truck. The spring is applying pressure, applying force on this arm here. It's called a slack adjuster, which twists this shaft, which is basically forcing the brake shoes out against the drum, which is locking it in place. And it's a good thing because, of course, if it won't move overnight when the truck's parked, and then if you ever lose your air when you're driving, eventually you get to the point where this spring will overpower and apply your brakes and stop the truck and trailer, hopefully. The catch is I need to release these brakes to get this old cast drum off of here. So there's two ways you can do it. You can basically twist off and adjust the slack adjuster to release the pressure, or the way I like to do it is to apply air. I'll just have to disconnect the line on the parking side, apply whatever, 100 pounds of air, and it'll overpower the spring, and then I can put the cage bolt in there and then release the air, and then it's properly, safely caged, and then we can remove the drum. So more than one way to skin a cat, but that's the way I like to do it. Yeah, so nothing too complicated. Just took that line out. Now we'll put just a tap on here so I can get it started. And I'm sure there's people out there that are saying, oh, that's not how I would do it. But like I always say, it may not be the right way, but it's my way. Okay, now we need to get our cage bolt ready. There we go. Okay. Add some air. Oh, I didn't open the valve yet. And there we go. And it brought the spring back, and now I can put the cage bolt in. We just want it to hold in place. Okay. All right, safely caged. Now I saw something pretty slick on TikTok where a guy just used it's gonna work, huh, Mike? Yeah, I think because I got it up too high, it's not gonna work, but it was a slick trick where they just used the dolly to flip it on there. So I guess that's not gonna work because it's too high. Darn. Sorry, back. Okay. Okay. Oh, those are stout. Okay, so this is the new ConMet hub that I put on there last winter, and I had just quickly put on some paint there that looks like it's coming off. It survived a little pretty good on the backside. Yeah, these brakes have probably stopped 3 times since I put them on there. And we got lots of cobwebs. Spiders and mice love hanging out in behind the drums there. Okay, next up, I guess, we've got to get the axle out. Now, of course, so this is the fill port, and you're supposed to actually, there's 2 ways you can do it. When you put this all together, you can fill up the main housing there, and then you can jack one side of the truck up, and it would drain oil down and fill this bearing cavity, and then you do the same and tilt it down the other way. Now we're slightly tilted, not enough to actually send all the oil down there, and I did fill this up. I put a liter of oil in here, or a quart for my American friends, when I put this together. So I've got to take the axle off now, and when I take it off, all that oil that's in there is gonna drain out. So we'll put a catch base in there, and we'll get all these nuts off here, and we'll pull the axle out. All right, I know it isn't an impact socket, but I don't have a deep impact 15/16, so at least I'm wearing safety glasses. Besides, these aren't too tight because I had it off last year, obviously. Now, one thing I've learned is by reading comments. Someone commented, an old mechanic commented and said, all right, don't take these nuts all the way off. Kind of like the locks on the Dayton wheels. You want to leave the nuts captured because these little cones can be under a lot of pressure. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the, just realized I need to get some axle gaskets. I think I got a couple in my other garage, but I'm going to hit the axle here and try and pop them all loose. Now again, they should come off not too bad because I already had this one off. But if you don't leave these nuts on, these little cones can go shooting out and do some damage. So we'll go ahead and bang this off of here. And again, I hope I got some extra axle gaskets. There she goes. And there goes my oil. All the cones are released now. Now I can safely take all the nuts off. I remember when I did this outside, I kept losing those cones in the snow. Boy, what a treat to be working on inside on concrete. All right, we'll deal with that later. These are the little tapered cones I was talking about. So we'll sleeve all of those. Oh, and one thing I learned too the hard way was after I put this together outside in that episode, I forget which episode number it was, but I noticed it was actually leaking. So I ended up pulling those nuts back out and putting a little blue silicone or gasket maker on the cone and then on the threads as well. So that's something as preventive maintenance that we'll do, putting this back together. Oil's going everywhere. Now the nice thing is it is tilted up slightly, so hopefully it doesn't drain too much out. Oh, what am I saying though? We're replacing this hub, so all that oil is going to come out of there. Okay. Hands clean? Yeah, clean enough. We'll brake clean it before we put it back in there. Yeah, somewhere on the splines, but nothing too drastic. Okay, we'll park this over here. Okay, so I gotta take the jam nut off, and then the lock rings, and then the inner nut, and then this whole hub should just come right out of here. I want to be careful taking this off because I don't want to damage the seal on the back there, because again I'm going to try and reuse this and the other 3 hubs over on the cab over. So I got my collection of 6-point sockets. There we go. Ooh, that's loud. Good old Milwaukee. Okay. And the inner nut is not necessarily fully tight because again I had it set, the preload set, and I had the end play. I think it was pretty tight. If I recall, it was only about 1/1000. See, there's a little tab there, and that's what grabs into the lock ring here and keeps that from turning. So once you set your preload, it can't back out, and then the jam nut holds it on there. Okay. Now, here's where the preset plus would come in handy, because I could just turn and it would slowly bring it off the spindle. But again, this one was, see, look at that, front bearing wants to fall out. This one was just put on there, so it shouldn't be too bad. Oh, come on. There it goes. Oh, there goes all the oil too. And see, your outer bearing falls on the ground. Can't say it enough, that preset plus is a good idea to help get the hub off of there. We'll drain all what's left of the oil, hopefully get it in there instead of all over my garage floor. So ConMet is very adamant that the full length of this seal journal gets cleaned up, so much so that they actually send you some emery cloth. So I'm just giving it a little touch up just to make sure I get rid of the last little bit of rust and dirt. I only did it, I kind of cheated when I put the hub on last year. I only went about halfway, so we're going to go all the way and get that clean, because you want to make sure that that's a beautiful shiny surface, because you don't want to risk mucking up the seal and then have an oil leak past there and going all over your brake shoes and having to do this job again. So it's best to put a little bit of effort, a little bit of elbow grease in. So this is probably the hardest part of this job. That's looking pretty good. The cleaner you make this, the better. Okay, I think we're ready for a hub. Again, with these older trucks, you want to be mindful of which hub you're putting on, because again, this side of the truck is left-handed thread and the passenger side is the typical right-handed thread. So if you order 4, you're going to have 2 left-handed and 2 right-handed. Now they actually got them color-coded, and then they've got little L's. I don't know if you can see that, little L's stamped right into the studs there. So we know that this guy goes on this side of the truck. They call for putting a little bit of oil on the inner diameter of both bearings and then the seal. So I just got a little bit of 80-90 here, and we'll paint it in. This is just to help it go onto the spindle easier. Okay. So paint this. Don't need to put oil on the collar. I don't think it's as tight a fit as the bearings are. Put a little on the inside of the seal. And another good idea is to make sure that you don't have any excess oil on the outside of the seal here. Just because it may be deceiving down the road and you'll think you got an oil leak. So, okay, that's ready to go on there. Now, because of that spacer and the bearings and everything's already kind of preloaded, it keeps you on center line. So as you go to put this thing on, there's no chance of mucking up the seal. Oh, that goes on nice. Okay, so now we can take the shipping cover off of here. Okay. So this little notch goes in the keyway, a little slot cut in the spindle. Put that guy on there. And then we'll put the nut on. Okay, now we've got to torque this up. Now my torque wrench, I actually bought this used. I bought it from a neighbor of my father-in-law's, and I'm sure it was well taken care of. But I actually thought before I started this project, if I should take this thing in and calibrate it. So I brought it into Kingsway Instruments there on the south side of Edmonton. And we've got here 300 foot-pounds right about there. And I had it calibrated, and they do it at different increments. So at the 100 foot-pounds, it was just outside of tolerance. I think it was 5 or 6 foot-pounds out. But then the more it went, like at 300 or 400 foot-pounds, I think it was out like 60 or 70. So that was money well spent. So now we'll take our 3 3/4 inch 6-point, and we'll tighten this up. Now, you want to turn this as you're doing it. I'll probably have to stand up to get to 300 foot-pounds. There we go. Done. No 8-step process, no in and out, no jam nuts, no lock nuts, no torquing on, torquing off. that's it. Get to 300, hear a click, and there's one final step we need to do. Okay, so as I mentioned, there's 3 little slots in the nut there. Don't ever back this off. Once you get to 300 foot-pounds, you just leave that. Actually, let's see how smooth that is. Oh, that's snug. Yeah, I don't feel any end play. Again, they're targeting 0. So that is sweet. Okay. So now those 3 notches, inevitably one is going to line up with the hole. So that one's blocked, and that one's slightly blocked, but that one's open. So that one is the one we're going to put this little hook into. And you don't need any fancy tools for this guy. You're just going to snap it into the slot that's cut in the nut there. There's that one. And that's it. That is official. Ready to roll down the highway. Okay, let's put that axle in, and we'll get the gasket on there and tighten all those nuts up. And then we'll put some, don't worry, those bearings are obviously dry right now, but there's a little port here that we'll put some oil in there, so they'll be good and lubricated. You want to make sure that you use a little bit of brake clean on the inside of the drums, because they come from the factory with a little bit of some type of oil, I think, to keep the machine surface from rusting in storage or transport. So clean that all off of there, because the last thing you want is oil on your brake shoes. That makes for a bad day. Okay, that's my favorite part, is lifting these stupid things. Bye. Come on, there we go. Okay, let's throw a wheel on there, see what that looks like. Yeah, these wheels are heavy. There we go. Oh, hang on, Mark. Don't get out over your skis. You haven't put any oil in yet. Oh, look at that. It's even got a magnet on there. That's pretty slick. So it's actually going to pick up any metal particulate that's rolling around in there, similar to transmissions and differentials. So we'll put a liter of oil in this, and this is going to just create a bath for those bearings to pick up the oil when we start driving it. There we go. Firestone beauties. Oh yeah, that's how it's supposed to look. Thanks, ConMet. And don't forget to download the ConMet app on your smartphone. It's a great way to look up part numbers if you've got the maybe the casting number because you don't know the part number. Basically any number that you find on the component, you can type in there. It's got ConMet numbers, Meritor, Stemco, it's got all the competitor part numbers. So that can help you. There's a lot of great information there. And then if you don't know, you can actually work your way down. No, I don't know. It's a truck with drum brakes. We'll say it's a Kenworth. We'll look for the rears. The hub material will say it's made out of aluminum. There you go, long studs or short studs. We've got inner and outer aluminums. And there you go, it walks you down to the exact part number of what you need. And check it out, 5-year, 500,000 mile warranty. Mint. Click the Twin Stick Garage logo to subscribe. And be sure to comment down below. I encourage you to share any thoughts, feedback, suggestions, stories, or even just a simple hello. I read and appreciate every one. And if you really want to help out the channel, head over to my Patreon, a subscription-based service that you can sign up and see videos before they're released on YouTube. I'm also going to be posting some content that you can't see anywhere else, so go check it out.